Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and I had almost forgotten what watching bad football was like.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and man, it hurts to come off that high.
I'm Alan Pinkett, former player, and was the steel curtain reincarnated today?
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Well, I know no one's feeling great right now, so we greatly appreciate you guys joining us here on the Locked On Colts Network. Today's Squad Show episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I'm Derek Schultz. I've been a sports talker in Indianapolis for many years. I'm joined by Notre Dame legend and former NFL running back Alan Pinkett, and you everydayers, of course, know Zach Hicks. Locked On Colts, everyone favorite film buff, and we hope to have Jake Arthur maybe hop on very late in the show once his post-game duties wrap up from Pittsburgh, but that is still TBD. What is not TBD, the Colts laid a little bit of a stinker today in PGH. Post-game show is going to feel a little bit different as we talk about a loss, Indy falling in Pittsburgh 27-20. And on the show today, we'll talk about, look, they got manhandled. I know the final score says one thing. You watched 4 quarters of that game, and really outside of the first 2 drives, you never felt like the Colts were very much in control. We'll discuss the turnovers and Daniel Jones, some disastrous O-line play. I think there's a lot to peel back here. We'll also, for the first time this season, have more studs than duds, I think, when we get into the third segment of the show, even though there were some good performances today, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And then we'll get into, what this means going forward, kind of take the 30,000-foot viewpoint on it, and whether or not a Pittsburgh hangover could last with a difficult trip, albeit not against a great opponent in Atlanta, but a difficult trip to Germany looming. But, Zach, I know we're going to get deeper into this game, but on the surface, 6 turnovers, basically 90% of your opponent's points result from your own mistakes. That's not only a recipe for a loss, it's a recipe for a disaster, and that's what we saw this afternoon.
Yeah, it was just a game that from the get-go just felt off for this Colts team. Even that first drive where they were able to go down and get 7 points on, like an 80-yard drive, it was like, okay, cool. The Colts offense is still rolling. It was still pretty sloppy on that drive. Some 2nd and long, some 3rd and longs, had to convert 2 4th and shorts just to get that drive continually going. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed downhill, and they just were never able to really get into a rhythm. And we saw on offense how it just completely fell apart. 2 really bad interceptions from Daniel Jones, 2 plays from offensive tackles where they just got beat around the edge that led to fumbles. The Josh Downs punt play that didn't end up actually hurting them early because the Colts defense stood tall, but another just play that you can't have. And, when you play against playoff caliber teams, especially on the road, because look, the Steelers are a playoff caliber football team. They have a lot of good things going there. They're a well-coached team. We know Mike Tomlin teams are going to be in the playoffs. The last thing you can afford is having 1 turnover, 2 turnovers, 3 turnovers, but 6 in a game. Like you're not beating the worst team in the NFL with 6 turnovers in a game. It's almost miraculous that this was even considered a game for some portion of this when the Colts returned the ball over the way they were, which maybe is a testament to their defense actually playing fairly well for one of the first times this season. So yeah, a lot to clean up, obviously, going forward. We knew that the Colts' turnover luck was certainly going to regress at some point. Now, I didn't expect to double the turnovers in one game that they had on the season. They went from 3 turnovers on the year to 9 now on the year just because of one game. That was honestly completely unexpected, but it's the NFL, man. No team's an easy team, and it's especially hard to beat teams on the road. We saw multiple upsets today going on around the league. And again, when you're turning the football over, it doesn't matter if you're going against a playoff caliber team like the Steelers, or you're going against the Panthers or the Browns or the Titans, whoever it is. If you're turning the ball over like this, you're not winning in the NFL. So the Colts, it was really just on them not to shoot themselves in the foot. And they took a shotgun to both their feet constantly, not even just with turnovers too, just with self-inflicted wounds, early penalties on offense too, like pre-snap penalties, bad sacks on missed blitz pickups. Like, it was just a really bad mental game for this Colts team, one that you don't want to see, but over the course of 18 weeks throughout the regular season, they happen. The key is just how you bounce back from it, especially now going on this long road trip to Germany. How do they bounce back from this, and how do they roll into the bye week? Do they roll in at 8-2, feeling decent, bouncing back from that loss? Or do they go into their 7-3 coming off 2 losses staring Kansas City and Arrowhead coming out of the bye week. So next week will be a big test for this team to see how they bounce back.
Well, 100 years ago when I played, we had a saying, 3 turnovers, you should lose, 4, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So when you have 6, I don't know what the saying is for that.
Certainly
but,
going to lose.
Yes, yeah. But I would, like to give credit to the Steelers, because this is what happens in the NFL. Whenever a team's pride is tested, and the Colts entered this game with a number of accolades, the MVP talk for not only JT, but for Daniel Jones also, and the Colts being favored in Pittsburgh's home stadium, that can make a lot of players, really dig deep and say, we're professionals too. And every time I see it where players or a team's pride is tested, that's why you have that saying on any given Sunday. But I got to give a lot of credit to the Steelers, because to me, it was a good first drive by the Colts. Took 5 minutes off the board, 13 plays, and got a touchdown. But all day long, there was more pressure on Daniel Jones. The passes were a little more contested. There were passes that were batted down, and then the tip passes. So to me, it was just great individual effort on the part of the Pittsburgh Steelers players to get those tips, to cover tighter, to apply more pressure. And where the Colts might have messed up is you probably want to chip TJ Watt when he's coming around the corner. I don't think the Colts, took anything for granted or came into the game thinking that a team is going to lay down, because no team lays down in the NFL. But the Steelers definitely had their mojo today, and they played like a playoff caliber team. And any team is going to go through some dog days where you have a couple of weeks where you can't get things right, but then all of a sudden they click. And today it clicked for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, big time credit to that Steelers defense, where they heard all the talk all week for sure. And they came out and they punched this Colts team in the mouth. That first drive, I thought the Colts, again, they were sloppy, but they were still able to get 7 on the board, convert a couple 4th downs. That can be demoralizing for a lot of teams, especially where the Steelers were coming into this game, getting their butt kicked by Joe Flacco and getting their butt kicked by, Jordan Love last time in prime time. And you would think that would lead to just them being more demoralized. But after that, they were just throwing haymakers at this Colts offense, and the Colts just weren't able to recover. And then it just ended up becoming like a snowballing effect. The Colts had many opportunities in this game to get it back into a feasible ball game. They're coming out of the half. They were down by 10. They had the ball to start the half for the first time all year. And they had a big drive where they could go down and get some points, take a bad sack, ball goes right back to the Steelers off a punt. And then you have, later in the game as well, the defense stands tall a couple times for the Colts. They have a chance, only down 10, to get back in it. Alex Highsmith forces a fumble, and then we're back to a 3-score game. So they had multiple opportunities. It just felt like they couldn't get out of their own way. And every 1 step forward was 2 steps back with a turnover or a sack or a pre-snap penalty. So sometimes you just have these days on offense. And hopefully they got all of this out of their system today. Getting their butt kicked up front and just not having anything work. Get it all completely out of your system today and get ready for that Falcons game next week. But ugly showing, but road games can kind of be like that against very good teams. I do think that the defense fought well all day for the Colts, so that's at least a positive point. And they didn't let this turn into just an absolute bloodbath that it should have been. But just need a lot better from the Colts offense going forward.
Yeah, and it was doubly worse because those turnovers were converted into points.
Right.
So direct correlation into how you lost the game. If you turn the ball over, then you want to at least limit that team to 3 points. But I guess it was 24 points were the result of turnovers. But I will say something positive about the Colts, because late in the game when it was decided, they didn't throw in the towel. They continued to play hard. It's one of those, so you say there's a chance we can come back. And so they played like there was a chance, but it was excellent practice too, because there's going to be a situation later in the season where they're going to have to play a hurry up and try to move the ball down the field real fast. And so they were doing that. They were getting live practice today, knowing they weren't going to win, but just you continue to fight to put yourself in position because they're going to face that type of situation again later in the year.
I just think to your point, Zach, about having it all happen at once was the real surprise for me. Like, yeah, I expected that the Colts aren't going to look like the 2007 Patriots offensively every single week. I think we knew there would be some regression to the mean, but offensively, this wasn't really even a regression to the mean as much as it was just a crash out. and with the way that the game started, even though, you know, I agree that execution-wise, maybe they weren't as sharp. They still got the job done, right, on that 13-play drive and a couple of fourth down conversions, and the Steelers go 3 and out, and then the defense stops them after the downs muff. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, like it started off like any other afternoon so far this season, and then just kind of all hell broke loose. But you know, the offensive line play, I think we really need to talk about that too. We'll talk about Daniel Jones, and I want to do that in the second segment. I don't want to just lead with the quarterback every single time, but I thought the tackles, especially today, and maybe I should save some of my ammo for studs and duds, were just, I think I said on Twitter, I thought they were stuffed in a garbage disposal, and maybe that's being too kind. I mean, I thought Ryman and Smith today just, they were in a world of hurt. And give the Steelers credit. I mean, they've got dudes on the outside, and they're guys on that side of the ball, Zach. I think we talked about on Wednesday's show, like this Steelers defense, you look at just the name recognition wise, you're like, oh my God. And then you looked at the results through the first 7 games, and you thought, wait, these guys are doing that? And they looked like their names would command that sort of respect with how they played today, a lot of them at least.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to go too much on Matt Gonsalves because I know he probably had the worst week of his life with his father passing earlier in the week, but he had a tough game today. But again, I don't want to go too hard on him. But the offensive tackles for sure had probably their worst showing of the season. And part of it, I think you can attribute to scheme. Again, they left these guys out to dry on a lot of these plays. And, you know, the Colts game plan all season have been reliant on play action, right? They've been a big play action team. And that's fine, right? If teams are scared of the run and they're playing the run. But what we kind of saw in this game was the Colts were doing play action and they weren't chipping the edges and having these like 7-step dropbacks or these like deep dropbacks. And with the way that these guys were able to bend the corner on the outside, it was just turning into a bloodbath back there. So I think, you know, you can certainly put a lot of this on the offensive tackles. Like they're both getting paid way too much money to get beat as cleanly as they were in this game. But also, I think at some point you do have to adjust and say, you know what, we have to live with 7 men blocking against these 4 guys and then getting Warren and Taylor into the flats after chipping just to hold the outside corner against these guys. They started to do a little bit more of that in the second half, but we saw every time they didn't, it resulted in a sack. It resulted in a sack fumble. So, yeah, it was just an issue for the Colts. And we'll talk about more with game planning too in segment 2. But I wanted to go real quick right back to what you said with the turnovers. Again, the major regression in this game. And this is why we call regression off like positive regression and negative regression when it comes to sports, because you can never just take one game and say like, this is now the new norm. You know, this is now the data point that matters the most. You look at this Colts team, we have through 7 games, they've been the best offense in the NFL. And now they have 1 game where they've been this turnover prone, ineffective offense that struggled on early downs. This is where, again, we take into the full picture here where they've been a really good offense this year. And we're not going to overreact to just 1 game where they got their butts kicked. I mean, it's just what happens in the league. So, look, we could see if this becomes a trend and they start struggling going forward and they start turning the ball over left and right, then we can talk about this being the new norm. But after 1 game on the road where just everything was just snowballing, I'm not ready to say this is the new norm for the Colts because I got 7 games of evidence saying they've been really, really good on that side of the ball. And now I just have 1 game of evidence that they were bad. Like I need to see more than just the 1 game. Like we'll see what happens going forward. But as of right now, this was just a bad showing from a pretty great offense throughout the game.
And then the NFL, when you lose, that's put on film. And so you can anticipate that everything that the Steelers did and had success with, Atlanta's going to do next week. So it's on film. But I think a lot of the things are correctable. You know, you don't always get your passes batted up in the air and then intercepted. You know, so I don't know how much the Colts did it to themselves or how many tactical mistakes they made, but sometimes it ends up just being the other team's day. And you just have to accept that as a player, but make sure that you analyze the mistakes, but then correct them, flush the results, correct them, and then go make the next team pay for it.
Sloppiness doomed the Colts today, but we'll talk about the scheme and the quarterback and the coaching, which some people had a problem with when we come back right here on the Colts Squad Show.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us alongside longtime NFLer and former Notre Dame running back Alan Pinkett and Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. I'm Derek Schultz. Schematically, Colts didn't really try to reinvent the wheel today. I mean, they came out throwing. They've been coming out throwing this year. It's worked a lot for them. The numbers certainly back that up through the first 7 games. Some folks upset about the run, but Jonathan Taylor really wasn't effective even in the touches that he did have today. 3.2 yards per carry, easily his worst game, and was obviously kept out of the end zone as well. Zach, did you have issues with, you talked about in a little bit in the first segment, maybe Shane being a little too stubborn. I know some of this is like kind of a hindsight is 2020, easy to play armchair quarterback after the fact, but even in game, were there some things that maybe the Colts stuck with? Was this the first game where you had multiple complaints maybe on that end?
Yeah, I mean, there were some complaints for sure schematically in this one. Again, not chipping the edges enough was a big one for me, and just probably a little bit too reliant on the pass here or there. But, for the most part, the run game wasn't working, and you were already getting behind. Like, how many drives were starting at 1st and 15, 2nd and 15, 2nd and 17? You're trying to do a first down pass, get within striking distance of the first down, and then you would run. But they were taking a sack on first down. So now you're behind the sticks, and you can't really run after that. So, yeah, I think we do kind of hyper-focus a little too much on the run versus pass disparity. Like, we were halfway through the second quarter, and the Colts were down multiple scores, and it's like, okay, like, from there, you do pass a little bit more. There was a bit of sunk cost fallacy, I think, with the Colts, where they kind of were like, okay, we've already committed too much to the pass here. We got to just stick with it, try to come back. But, yeah, it just wasn't – everything was off on offense in this one. It's kind of hard because, like, for every – like, they crossed the 50 a couple times and had positive momentum, and then they would have the one big negative play that just knocked them off track. And honestly, it could have been a lot worse. They were very effective on 4th down in this game. Imagine if they weren't effective on 4th down, how much worse this game could have been. But yeah, I think schematically there could have been things done a little bit better, but for the most part, the Steelers just made some big time plays, man. And it's tough. I mean, they had the lurker in there with Peyton Wilson on the first interception that you want Daniel Jones to see. And he, just didn't see it. They had the option route to Josh Downs, and the lurker who was supposed to be on the running back sunk into that window and threw it right to him. You have the RPO throw that's worked every single game to Michael Pittman Jr. in the slot. I think that was out of the half or a little bit out of the half. That RPO throw to Michael Pittman Jr. has worked constantly. I could show you on film how much that's worked this season. And Peyton Wilson just happened to get his hands up and knock that ball up in the air, and it ended up in an interception. So little things like that, some bad bounces going their way, just tackles getting beat at inopportune times. And it led to just major mistakes. I think Jones was seeing some ghosts as well in this one. After that first sack fumble, we saw him kind of seeing ghosts a little bit in there. But yeah, just one of those games where like everything that could go wrong did go wrong in this one for the offense. So like for as much of the fault you want to point at Daniel Jones, Shane Steichen, the run game, turnovers, the offensive line, I think that's all fair because they all kind of got their butt kicked in this game.
Well, the national media talks about, the running of Jonathan Taylor, and he ended up with 45 yards. So they're going to view that nationally as the Steelers, sort of broke the code. They found a way to stop the run. But, we've watched all these games. The run game usually bears its head in the second half. But the Colts weren't able to go to the run in the second half because they got behind, from the turnovers and the points. And usually you don't have Daniel Jones throwing 50 passes. I mean, a good game is him throwing maybe 25 to 30 passes and getting 20 to 25 runs from JT. But you had to put the running game on the shelf because you got behind, especially because of the turnovers. I mean, the Colts still won the time of possession battle. They had more first downs, but it's one of those games where the stats don't matter because what matters is the scoreboard, and the turnovers were leading to points being put on the scoreboard. So I wouldn't say that the Steelers shut down the running game. I think that the Colts just had to make a strategy change because they needed to score quick, and the way to score quick is put the ball in the air. But again, I think the Steelers had a great game plan in terms of, I say they had a good game plan. They had really good individual effort by different players, and I'm sure they had the same game plan, but like I said in the first segment, these passes were more contested than I've seen the receivers get contested before. I mean, they were all over them on their back, being able to hit the ball. And I don't know if they had already diagnosed which routes were going to be run, but guys were not as open as they should be. And that could be a combination of the pressure that was being applied up front and coverage. But I just go back to giving more credit to the Steelers than trying to find fault with what the Colts did.
Yeah, and one big thing I want to just add on to what you're saying there, Alan, is like this Colts team is not a run-first team. And we've been trying to say this for 8 weeks now, but I guess maybe now we can finally put it out there and let people really get into it. This is not a run-first football team. This is a pass-first football team that wants to build that lead up early with the pass, and then they use Taylor as the reliever, as the closer, the guy who finishes games off. The best way to neutralize the Colts run game is to build up a lead against them. If you get a 2-score lead on this Colts team coming out of the half, that's the best way to neutralize Jonathan Taylor, because they are a pass-first team. They are not a run-first football team. The reason why they've been so good on the ground this year, and because they've been able to run the ball so well, is because they've been so effective passing early in football games. So yeah, they're a run-first team. They're a pass-first team that leans on the run late. But if you're trailing like this because your passing game is ineffective, because you are throwing interceptions, because you're fumbling the ball, it takes away your run game as well and makes you one-dimensional. So at the end of the day, a lot of the faults, like in the Colts run game, for instance, today, comes down to just not passing the ball better early in the season or early in this game. So yeah, they just need to be better throwing the football. They have to avoid the turnovers going forward. This team just can't survive with turnover. No team can survive with turnovers,
no team,
especially this team.
No team.
Yeah, 6 in a game is just inexcusable, and it's just not going to happen. You're not winning games that way.
What did you think about Daniel Jones's performance? Alan, with your player perspective, I think sometimes you can kind of see when a guy gets rattled. Maybe it's a little bit more obvious with quarterbacks and other positions because we're so laser focused on that position to begin with. But did he look different today to you, besides the obvious fact with the interceptions and the strip sacks and all of that, just from a confidence level and a how he was handling himself in the pocket and such?
To me, he was still calm in the pocket. He looked confident the entire time. But, one of the things that can frustrate you is the result. The result of thinking you're comfortable in the pocket and you have time. Next thing you know, you get stripped. That can frustrate the hell out of you. And just the pressure in your face when you're not used to it. Although, he has never ever complained, and part of the reason he hadn't complained is because he's gotten great protection all year long. He's been able to step up into the pocket and deliver a strike most of the time. And today that wasn't happening. But I think Daniel Jones played well, and to me, he's trying to win. And the feeling I got was he could care less if he threw an interception. He's trying to win a football game, so he's not caring about his stats. He's trying to put the ball up to give his receivers the best chance to make a reception and try and win the game. So, I felt like no knock on his confidence, but overall as a team, they need to do a better job of protecting him.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's all about complementary football, right?
Mm-hmm.
When one side fails, you want other people to pick you up and such like that. And it's hard to play quarterback in the NFL when your offensive line is getting their butt kicked like this, when your receivers are getting locked up the way that they were, when you don't really have a semblance of a running game because you have to go away from it early because of early turnovers. So I think, you have to kind of grade it with that perspective in mind. I also think that the fumbles are just kind of tough for a quarterback. He gets blindside hit by both of those on there, and that's a place that as an offensive tackle you never want to leave your quarterback in that situation. If anything, I think a couple of his passes could have been a bit more accurate. The missed deep shot to Pierce certainly hurts, but that's kind of been an issue all year that you kind of live with Daniel Jones. Is the deep ball has just not been great this year. It's been like fine at best, and there have been a lot of misses to Pierce down the sideline. So I think that could have been a huge one there. But yeah, maybe a couple other ones where you want to get to the flats a little bit quicker, get down to Taylor a little bit quicker. Again, just get back into moving the ball forward 5 yards at a time, 6 yards at a time, instead of having to sit in there and try to get these chunk plays. And I do think he started pressing a little bit after that, like that first turnover or two. We did see him kind of hold the ball a little bit too long and kind of wait for more explosive plays to develop when, a big reason why he was named the starter is because he can move the offense efficiently and get down to those checkdowns and move that ball. So, yeah, I think he could have been better. I mean, this is probably his worst start of the season, like stats-wise, obviously, but in terms of how he played as well. But again, this is one game of many that we've seen from him this year. We have enough games of evidence to say that he's been better this season. So I'm not going to take one just horrendous game where he was getting harassed all game long by a very dominant pass rush and say like, oh no, Daniel Jones is back to being New York Daniel Jones. I have 7 games of evidence that say he's not that guy. So until those stack up into 5, 6, 7 games of evidence against him, I'm not going to overrate this one game on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And this offense works best when it's on schedule, and they were off schedule all day long.
Yep.
All day long. You're looking for 2nd and 6 or less, and they weren't getting that. They were getting 1st and 15, 3rd and 20. No offense can really have success when it's off schedule.
No question about that. And one other note that I did notice, that maybe this can wait for the film review or some, when you rewatch the game and all that. Sorry, I have a dog that's very upset about the Colts' performance today as well, and the fact that I forgot to give him dinner before we started the stream. I thought the Steelers did the best job that I've seen anybody do against Tyler Warren this year as well, where it just felt like the second that he touched the ball, bang, there was somebody there. And obviously without being able to rewatch it and kind of see what was happening and all that, that's just a knee-jerk reaction take. But Zach, did you see some of the same there?
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of thought that was going to be the case. I thought, because they were like, we're not going to have this same thing happen that just happened the week before happen to us again. So I figured they would go all out trying to stop Tyler Warren, which honestly I was excited about, because for me that would have said go more empty personnel, isolate Josh Downs. And if you want to put 2 guys eyeing Tyler Warren, then cool, I can just get Josh Downs one-on-one all game long. But the Colts did a little bit too much, I think, with the condensed personnel early in the game, and it led to just some struggles again. They leaned into their play action game. Their play action game just wasn't good in this one, and that's kind of where the mistakes happened. So yeah, the Steelers just played exceptionally well on defense. All their star players looked like stars out there. Their corners were locked down in coverage. Their pass rush was outstanding. Their linebackers, I mean, Peyton Wilson had the game of his life out there with an interception, and then essentially a second interception, knocking that ball up to Sawyer. So Yeah, you sometimes a team just has your number. It's the first time that Tomlin's really got to Shane Steichen, but when they faced off like every single year, like they have, you're not going to always beat the great coach Mike Tomlin's a Hall of Fame coach. You're not always going to beat him. So games like this happen.
And speaking of tight ends, I don't know if we had a plan for their 6'7", 300-pound tight end, Darnell Washington, which, in the NFL, guys don't care how big you are. In fact, the bigger you are, it's a bigger target to hit. And these are professional tacklers. But he's still 6'7", 300 running. And, sometimes you hurt yourself hitting a dude like that. But that proved to be one of those areas that the Steelers were able to use to keep the ball moving, keeping the chains going and things. And I'm just surprised he's not that much more of a force.
He's a big boy, that's for sure. We come back for the first time all season. The Colts duds, unfortunately, outnumber the studs. We'll tell you who fell into what category when we return on the Squad Show. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters, and their Trade Master perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use our promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com, real people, real service. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. This is always the portion of the show that I look the most forward to in wins, and I dread the most in losses. It's studs and duds time. But even after the Rams game, guys, I'd have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure we had more studs than duds after the Rams game. I mean, that was a performance where I thought the Colts were mostly the better team that just kind of got in their own way. And while they did get in their own way today, I think you could obviously say that the Steelers were the better team with the sacks and they dictated terms in this game early this afternoon in a 27-20 win. But let's kind of get the duds out of the way. We've been talking about a lot of them, Ryman and Smith and the tackles. But again, Jonathan Taylor, 57 yards and no touchdowns. That's just not going to work. I know it's not him in a vacuum. That's not how running backs operate. But, Zach, most of the time when you're playing a road game against a playoff team and Jonathan Taylor accounts for 57 yards, I'm going to chalk that up as an L. Yeah,
I think duds can just be summarized as just the offense in general. I mean, we've talked about the whole show so far, but at the end of the day, the 6 turnovers is the biggest. You just can't turn the ball over like that in the NFL. And that's the biggest thing. When you go on the road, especially in the NFL, turning the ball over once or twice, like I said to start the show, once or twice could be a death roll for you. But when you get up to 6 times, you're not winning. But yeah, it gets you out of what you want to do. It gets your best player just out of the mix, because when you're turning it over, the other team gets a short field. They're able to go put points on the board. And then you're at the situation where you're staring at a 2-score deficit. And you're like, we can't just go to this all running offense, because then the clock gets burned. And then if they get the ball and score and mitigate our touchdown, then we have less time to come back. So you get into throwing the ball to try to come back, and it becomes kind of a mess from there. So it's just every single thing about the offense was a dud in this game. I guess Pierce and Downs and Pittman, when they had their chances to make plays, did some good things out there, but everything else, the run blocking too, was pretty rough today. I thought they had one of their worst games in run blocking, when I thought that they really had not turned a corner, but like these last month of play, their run blocking was on another level. Today, it just wasn't good. It wasn't good enough up front. And yeah, the whole offense was just a dud. So we've kind of spent the whole show talking about just the dud of the offense, but special teams too, I think kind of was a little bit of a dud. I know they had the 4th down fake to get the first down, which was nice, stealing a first down there, but you just can't have a muff punt in the NFL. Like that, they're so lucky that didn't come back to hurt them because the defense stood tall, but a muff punt is just inexcusable. I know Josh Downs hasn't done it all year back there, and it was a different look for him, but that just can't happen in the league. You can't lose points on special teams. And they didn't technically get hurt by this one, but it did flip field position. And even in a microcosm, it pushed the Colts back within their own 5 on that next offensive drive. And they had like 14 plays to get like 30 yards, and then they punted it back after that. So yeah, it's just, I think for a team that all year they played really great complementary football, offense, defense, and special teams helping each other out. And this one, the offense and the special teams really let down the defense in this game for the first time this entire season.
Well, both Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor get mentioned as MVP candidates, but the most valuable players on that offense is the offensive line.
Yeah.
And if they have to pass block 50 times, they are not going to be as effective as they should be. This is an offensive line that likes to, move forward when the ball is snapped and smack somebody in the face. But when you're pass blocking, you have to retreat. And, that's not any offensive lineman's specialty, is to retreat. You mean I'm benching 450 pounds so I can sit back and catch somebody? That's not what I signed up for. When they have an opportunity to move forward, then that's when this offense is going to be. So they would have to register as a dud. And in defense of Downs and the punt, being in that stadium, that wind can play tricks on you. And I never played in that stadium. I played in Three Rivers, the old Three Rivers, on that ghetto turf that they had. But the grass, I hear, is not much better in the stadium in Pittsburgh. But the wind, and the Steelers have complained about the wind there too, especially the kickers. But sometimes you're looking at that ball, and if that point stays up and it doesn't turn over and it just drops straight down, it can affect how you're going to receive that ball. He's a professional at catching punts, so not making excuses for him, but the wind can play a factor. But I will mention one stud, and I think it was Leatu Latu. Got 2.5 sacks. And we always talk about him getting close to the quarterback. I mean, he's the master of pressures. In fact, he had one weekend he was second in the league in quarterback pressures, but has a problem getting home. But he got home today and got 2.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. What is it? 8 total tackles, something like that. 8 or 6 total tackles. So, that can be a thing that helps him move forward, because he was able to get to the quarterback and, like a running back scoring a touchdown and how that exhilarates you. I'm sure it's the same way for a defensive lineman getting that sack and finally getting to the quarterback, that maybe he turned the corner in terms of the things he needs to do to not just pressure, but to end up on top of the quarterback. So he, to me, was a stud today. He may have turned the corner.
Yeah, and, I really want to transition this, just talk about the defense a little bit, because I don't want to say the defense was like a stud overall in this one, because there were still, you want to hold a couple more of those touchdowns to field goals for sure, and stand a little bit tall and be completely complementary to your offense. But at the end of the day, the Colts offense put them behind the 8 ball all game long. And I thought they made several timely plays. I thought they did a lot of good things. I mean, Kenny Moore was fantastic in this game. Forced that fumble late that gave the Colts new life before Daniel Jones threw another interception. He had a couple of tackles for a loss in the backfield. A great pass breakup early in the game on that 4th down stop. I mean, heck, that 4th down stop early in the game in the red zone was their best defensive sequence of the year to keep Pittsburgh off the board there. Honestly, should be a game-changing moment for most teams. It just didn't happen today because the Colts just couldn't get out of their own way on offense. So I think for the most part, the Colts defense did their job today. I thought Kenny Moore was certainly a stud. Leatu Latu, like you mentioned, Allen was a stud. I thought Zaire Franklin had a pretty good day up there too, getting a lot of tackles for a loss. Jermaine Pratt with that huge tackle for a loss late. So yeah, I think the defense, finally getting back a starting caliber corner on the outside and Jalen Jones. So they don't have like this major weak point on the outside, led to things looking a lot better on that side of the ball. So if you're going to be happy about anything from this game, which you shouldn't be, I'm not saying you guys should be after a game like that, just be, I guess, a little bit more comforted that the defense looked a lot better this week than they had in the past couple weeks without Charvarius Ward and without all these corners on the outside. Now with Jalen Jones back out there over the Mitchells and the Jonathan Edwards, they look like a pretty competent defensive unit for most of the day. So, the defense did their job today. They really did. And I think Kenny Moore and Laiatu Latu were exceptionally strong today. It's just, it wasn't enough with the Colts offense not getting out of their way, but they gave the Colts offense a chance to come back multiple times. They got multiple big stops and there was a point where the Colts had 4 offensive turnovers and it was like a 10-point game and they had the ball again. And then they had their 5th offensive turnover. And then it was a 10-point game with 3 minutes left and they got a crazy fumble they shouldn't have had. And they had a chance to go down and bring it back to a 1-score game again. And then it was another turnover. So the defense can only do so much out there. I thought they played good complementary football, but the offense just, again, was such a dud that it didn't matter.
And I look at body language, and early in the game, you could tell Aaron Rodgers was a little suspect of that defense. He was shuffling his feet a little bit more. He was letting the ball go early on a few occasions because the Colts just were putting that much pressure on him. He didn't look comfortable in the first half, but once they got a lead and they got the turnovers, then he was able to gain confidence. He became the old Aaron Rodgers where he was just slinging that thing. But early in the game, I think the Colts were trying to send a statement that you in for a long day, buddy. But the Colts ended up shooting themselves in the foot, and the rest was history.
It was a tie game at one point when the Steelers had, I want to say, I you know what? I think it was a tie game where the Steelers were leading at one point early in the game, and the Colts were outgaining them by well over 100 yards. It was like 26 total yards on offense for the Steelers, and it was a 7-7 game. And again, you just can't win in the NFL. You would think that regression would come the other way, but it just kept snowballing, just completely going downhill for the Colts. So again, when we talk about analytics, there's positive regression and negative regression. Typical games, you're not just going to have this complete snowball effect where a couple early turnovers turn into 6. And sometimes you have games like this where it just all compiles like this. So the key is just making sure this doesn't repeat, that's the biggest thing. How they show up next week against Atlanta is going to be the true testament for this team. Because we saw earlier in the year when they had the game against the Rams on the road, again on the road against the Rams, where they just shot themselves in the foot constantly, a couple bad penalties, the drop touchdown at the goal line by A.D. Mitchell. What did they do the next week after that? They just completely eviscerated the Raiders. They just came out of that game and they just took the Raiders to town. And I want to see some fight like that against the Falcons. I know it's a road game in Germany and it can be kind of weird, but I want to see that same kind of fight and spirit maturity from this team as they showed in that last loss that they had against the Rams earlier this year.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what just to kind of tie a bow on studs and duds, what you had to say about Jalen Jones. And I think it's just one of those performances that gets lost in what happened around him today. But for as much as we've turned the Colts cornerbacks into a punching bag because they've had a bunch of guys off the street in there and really kind of a rotating cast of failures, I thought the Colts corners and just in coverage, this was a really ordinary day for the Pittsburgh offense. I mean, they had a 6-yard scoring drive. They had a 14-yard scoring drive. It's like, yeah, that counts as 10 points and that looks bad, right? But the offense caused that, not the defense. and that's not even taken into an account holding up after the Josh Downs muffed punt as well. So I really did like what the defense did today. It's just it's a shame. We've had a lot of games this year where the offense did their part and the defense didn't. They were just kind of along for the ride. But this was one of those games where I think the defense certainly played well enough to win. And Pittsburgh, they didn't run the ball particularly well. Like they didn't necessarily, they had some key third downs, I guess. And they found plays when they mattered, I guess, at the end of the day. But overall, I thought this was, if you would have handed me a sheet of paper and said, hey, here's what the Colts defense did today, with a drive summary sheet and all of that, I would have felt very, very confident that the Colts were about to win the game. But them's the breaks.
Well, I would have been terrified seeing like a 6-yard drive, 14-yard drive. I'm like, oh no, something horrible went. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can only do so much on defense. I thought they stood tall several times in this game, got the field, several opportunities, and they did their job. It's just, again, we talk about complimentary football, and the offense just wasn't complimentary today. And you know what? You give them some leeway because they have been holding up their end of the bargain through every other game this year. But you just can't let this continue like this. And I think, Steichen, Jones, the offensive line, all of them know that. They're going into the meeting room after this saying, this is unacceptable and we can't have this continue. And they'll right the ship. So yeah, I'm not too concerned going forward. It's just, hopefully it's just a one-off game for the team. Hopefully, again, if you average 6 turnovers a game on offense, you're not winning anything the rest of the year. Yeah. So hopefully this is a one-off game when it comes to that kind of turnovers that they had on offense.
Speaking of a continuation, will there be a hangover from this game that bleeds over into Germany? Will the Colts look like me on New Year's Day when they play the Falcons next week? Let's hope not. We're going to talk about it when the squad show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel. Right now, new customers, again, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head over to FanDuel.com and sign up now, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. FanDuel. Back for a final time on the Colts Squad Show. Indy falls in Pittsburgh 27-20. I don't have the stat in front of me. I'm trying to remember it from early this week. I do another show with a longtime radio partner of mine named Jake Query, and I looked up. I knew the Colts had a checkered history in Pittsburgh, and I think after today, in their Indianapolis history, they are 1-13 in Pittsburgh. I think that's right. There's something like 2-18 overall. So even going back to the Baltimore days, it was not really pretty there in Pittsburgh. But now they'll head to Germany. I mean, we alluded to this, guys, on the Wednesday show, this stretch of games at Pittsburgh. Then you got to go international. Then you got to go to Arrowhead. Then you got to go to Jacksonville. Then you got to go to Seattle. There's some really tough trips ahead here for the Colts. And now the question is, does this remain? But Zach, kind of like you said, look, 6 turnovers, I don't care how you shake it. Even for a bad team, 6 turnovers is an outlier. You don't see that happen a lot in NFL games. And there's something called fumble luck, where I don't want to chuck it all up to luck, but let's face it, every single ball bounced right to a Steelers defender today. That's something else that generally isn't sustainable too. Colts did move the ball. Some of that was in garbage time, but you still saw Alec Pierce be Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. make tough catches, and Jonathan Taylor's going to be fine. He just had a bad game. Again, this is not me just trying to talk myself into it. I think ultimately the Colts are going to be fine, especially against an Atlanta team that is fine, but certainly isn't a world beater.
Yeah, I think Alan's going to agree with this as a player, is that you don't really learn a lot from one loss. You learn about a team, how they respond to a loss. That's the most important thing you can learn about an NFL team, is how do they respond when the going gets tough, when they have this bad game where, following their loss to the Rams, they got on this absolute tear on offense, 30 plus points every single game following that loss to the Rams. And they were just killing teams at home, on the road. It didn't matter. The Chargers, a really good team, didn't matter. They were still killing them. And they were just on a roll. But now that they have this big setback, how do they respond? Do they respond like they did earlier this season? Or do they fall into this a little bit of a lull that some teams do fall into throughout the season? We're going to learn a lot about what this team is all about this next week against the Falcons, where technically it's a home game. You lose a home game for some stupid reason in the NFL by having to go over there and play in Germany. And, just take care of business against a team that, again, teams like the Falcons this year, the Colts have taken care of business against. They've done that against every single below average team they've played. And I'm not trying to sleep on the Falcons here. The Falcons are a competitive football team. They're probably closer to the Steelers than they are to the Titans this season. But you just want to see this Colts team come out and bounce back from a loss, get into the bye week at 8-2 with a healthy divisional lead. And then you can take care of business after you rest up on that bye week and get everybody healthy and get back to what you want to get to. So all focus right now just needs to be on the Falcons, getting in there, winning that game, then getting into your bye week and getting ready for a pretty tough stretch. But for me, again, I have to see more than just one game like this against the Steelers to be like concerned and terrified of this Colts team. I have enough data on the year to where they've been this really good offense and this really good competitive team. It's going to take more than just one bad game to change that. I mean, look at what one of the Super Bowl favorites in the NFC right now is the Packers, and they have a loss to the Panthers and a loss to the Browns this year. Things just happen in the NFL. The Jaguars right now are losing to the Raiders. Things are crazy that happen in the NFL. It's all about how you bounce back and how you're able to come back from these losses. That's the most important thing in this league.
Well, the good thing is this isn't college, because 2 losses in college is devastating. Right. Everybody wants to win the national championship, and you can get by with losing 1, but losing 2, you've almost completely eliminated the opportunity. But life in the NFL, losses are part of the deal. In fact, there's only been one team in the history of the NFL that's been perfect. And you got to go back to 1972 for that to happen. I know the Patriots almost did it, but you're going to lose. And so how you deal with a loss is of utmost importance. And most guys in the NFL look at losing. They don't like losing, but the best way not to lose is to correct all the things you did in that loss. Find the things that went wrong in that loss. And I think there are things in this game that when they look at the film, they'll be able to see, oh yeah, we can correct that. Oh yeah, we can tweak this. All those things are correctable. And you also have to have a short memory and flush it and just forget about it. They're going to have to go in tomorrow and look at the film one last time and get dog cussed a little bit when they see the bad plays. But then after that, they will never watch that film again. They might as well burn it. And then they'll be focused on how they can improve. But, it's the one thing that gives me optimism is watching how they played late in the game. Watching them continue to fight and struggle. They were going to lose. They didn't have enough time to do what they needed to do. They needed 2 touchdowns and a field goal. It wasn't going to happen against an NFL caliber defense. But they used it as a teaching method to say, okay, when we're in this situation again, where we're going to have a minute and 50 seconds and we're down by 5, how are we going to traverse down the field? And that's what I saw them do. And that lets me know this is a mature team that understands the bigger picture. Today, throw it away. Doesn't matter. 2 losses. You're still in first place. And you got to remind yourself of that too. You're still in first place and you've got a significant lead. And everything that you want out of this season is still attainable. It's still sitting out there for you to go get. This is just a little minor setback. It can become a major setback if you feel sorry for yourself or start making excuses or start pointing fingers at, well, the coaches aren't giving it to me enough, or, I should be used in this way, which is not characteristic of this football team. This football team has the mentality that everybody eats. And I do want to, give a couple attaboys to both Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman for going over 100 yards receiving. But you think they're really happy that they went over 100 yards each? They lost. Yeah. They lost. I kind of liken it to, and forgive me for rambling on, I liken it to these coaches with buyouts. Like Kelly got fired, and I guess today Hugh Freeze got fired from Auburn, and all these other coaches that got fired, but they got these huge buyouts. You really think they're happy? They're disappointed as hell. Yeah, I got $50 million coming, but I'm a failure because I couldn't win on that level. So I don't know why I went off on that sidetrack, but it's just to let you know that sometimes success isn't what you do personally. Success is being able to share with a group of guys that have a common goal, which is the Super Bowl. And, I was happy to see that Jonathan Taylor was interviewed before the game, and they were talking about him potentially being an MVP player. And he said, as long as it comes with us winning a Super Bowl, then I'll take it. And that's the attitude that you have to have if you're going to be successful in this league.
Yeah, and just talking from a schematic standpoint too, I think a lot of what got them into trouble early in this game is the Steelers know that the Colts come out in these heavier personnel sets and they like to throw the ball out of these heavy personnel sets. So they were sitting on play action and getting after the quarterback, and you only have so much install throughout the week, right? You only have so much. So if a defense does something that you're not expecting, you're kind of screwed in that moment. You can rely on lucky bounces and adjustments on the fly, but for the most part, a lot of game planning and play calling is determined in the week. So when a team does something completely different on Sunday, it's like, oh shit, like we can't really you're kind of stuck at that point.
Yeah.
But after the game, you can self-assess. You can look back at what's going on and say, you know what? They were blitzing our condensed sets. They were pass rushing on run looks that we were giving them. So then your next thing can be, hey, we're going to come out in some heavier personnel sets, and we're going to give Taylor a couple more runs early in the game out of these heavy personnel sets just to keep defenses honest. So again, so much of this is just what you learn from losses. When you look at the film and you say, you know what, this is what we need to do better. This is a way that we can combat this in the future. This is how we can pick up these blitzes better. I think they're going to be fine going forward. And also, again, with the offensive line, I don't want to put a bunch of excuses on it, but Matt Gonsalves probably had the toughest week of his entire life this week, and I'm sure that contributes to some lackluster play or some loss of focus out there. So again, you're not going to have weeks like this every single week. You want guys to be able to bounce back and really get into it. And again, until this becomes a multiple week thing, I'm not too concerned going forward. This team come back, win next week against the Falcons, no matter how it looks, get into that bye at 8-2, get healthy in that bye week, have 2 weeks to prepare for the Chiefs, and come out there and throw some good punches with the Chiefs, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah, and let's give some credit to, Mike Tomlin and his staff as well. I mean, we talked about them, being static and conservative and all those other things. And Shane Steichen, had him in a blender in previous games. And, he knows what he's doing, right? Alan, what do you say? Those guys get paid too, right? And his players, the coaching staff, I mean, they were prepared and ready to go. And they, this was very much a backs up against the wall type game for the Steelers. And that's not to excuse the Colts' performance today, but sometimes, you have to give the other team credit just for you felt in that building like the season was almost on the line. I know it's November 2nd, but with the way that they played the last 2 weeks, they rose to the occasion. And the Colts will have to find a way to do that themselves. Not that the season's on the line. They're 7-2. They're still in a very advantageous spot. But as you said, Zach, you don't want this to suddenly spiral, because if you fall flat in Germany, then you're staring a 3-game losing skid right in the face, having to go to Arrowhead and then a game against Houston, who probably, I guess, is going to be your number one contender. I don't know. Maybe Jacksonville's going to be that in the division. Who knows with the way that those two teams are playing as well. Still a lot left to be determined.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind with this Colts team, right now the Jaguars are struggling with the Raiders. I don't know what the result of the game is going to be, but if the Jaguars do come back and win that game, the Colts are still 2 games up in the division at the halfway point of the year. If the Jaguars lose that game, they're 3 games up in the division. They have 1 AFC loss on the year. Oh, and by the way, despite today's loss, the Colts have a plus 109 point differential on the year.
Pretty good.
Look, they'll be fine, guys. They'll be fine. They're 5-0 at home. They've had a couple road losses to division-leading teams in the league. They will be fine. I really am not concerned about this Colts team going forward. It's just, again, looking at what went wrong today, there's just some things that you got to flush, get out the back of your mind, and do your thing next week. So come out here, just take care of business next week. Get in there at 8-2. An 80% win percentage through 10 games would be fantastic. Get 8-2 going into the bye week, and we're all sitting good. Like if I told you, after the Raiders game, that the Colts could be sitting at 8-2 at the bye, but they would just lose one of those 5 games in between that, we would all be celebrating. We'd all be celebrating that they're 8-2. But yeah, you just got to win this game against the Falcons, and then all is good. The vibes are back and fixed. The vibes are great, and we're feeling good going into the bye week.
And and the goal is don't let the Steelers beat you twice. You don't let the things linger. And I think there are enough veterans and professionals in that building that understand that losses are a part of playing in the NFL. But winning is so much better. So let's get back into the business of winning.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Colts Squad Show. We are your place for live game recaps, as you undoubtedly know by now, because you guys are still coming in here every single week following each and every Colts game this season. But we have a Wednesday show too, so set your watches, calendars, iPhones, whatever, 9 p.m. for our midweek show as the Colts squad reconvenes with Jake Arthur, as well as we'll have our full cast of characters. We'll be back with you then to recap the injury report and the first practice of the week and get you set for Atlanta and wheels up to Germany. But until then, follow us on socials at Locked On Colts and check out our other great content on YouTube and TikTok. And we'll see you next time right here on the Colts Squad Show.